Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Death Note Part 1, Episode 19, Matsuda. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of what happened within this episode. So the main storyline for this episode is that we've learned in previous episodes that Matsuda has been given the role of Misa's manager so that she can be watched outside of the headquarters when she's working by a member of the police staff, and Matsuda was chosen for that position. And he is with her at a at like a film shoot, like a movie shoot for a film. And this happens to be nearby the Yotsuba building. And Matsuda has a bit of a crisis of feeling that he isn't useful or that he's been looked down on and he wants to be able to do more. So he takes it upon himself to abandon the role he was given and run over to where the Yotsuba's main building is and sneak in. And because it is Matsuda, whose competence is always in question, he does get caught by the Yotsuba group, and he uses the fancy belts that that the task force was given when they first met Elle in person to send an emergency signal. And then, in order to stall for time, in order to try to get some help, he plays the part of Misa's manager and starts pitching her to them as a potential commercial actress for their group and asking about a contract, and tells them about how she's filming nearby, which they'd be able to follow up on, and that he'll call her over once she's done filming so that they can meet her in person. And his stalling does work, and on their end, Elle, Light, and the rest of the task force are able to set it up that Misa does go there after she finishes her filming for the day. And then they go to a secondary location, which Elle and the team have cameras in order to host a party for the Yotsuba group alongside some other models from Misa's company to try to basically schmooze the Yotsuba group officials and make it look like Matsuda was legitimately trying to sell his client to them as a potential commercial actress. And he takes the opportunity to drink, goes to the toilet because he's so drunk, and he calls Elle. Elle then informs him that in order to save his life, they have to fake his death. And so they basically have him return from the bathroom looking drunk, go out onto the balcony, and basically act a fool, get onto the banister, and fall. He's caught by a mattress partway down, and then on the ground, Iber in a wig plays the part of the body there. And of course, by the time the officials get to the entrance of the building, Iber's already in a body bag and being taken by ambulance, like a fake ambulance that actually contains Light and Elle, away from the scene. So the Yotsuba group thinks Matsuda's already dead, and then in the newspaper they state that Misa's manager has passed on, so there is a bit of a blurb obituary there to confirm his passing so that he's out of their mind. Meanwhile, while all of this was going on, we find out that Elle is the top 3 detectives in the world, and Elle is his main alias, but he also has an alias Denevu, and then also an alias for an Araldo Coyle, and his alias of the detective Coyle has been contacted by a member of Yotsuba's group to basically figure out his own identity and figure out who Elle is, which is the trap that is set, which is why he has the 3 identities as the top 3 detectives. And they accept the job from them on that front. And at the same time, Wedi and Iber are being tasked with infiltrating the Yotsuba group more skillfully than Matsuda did to basically wire their own cameras into the security system so that they'll be able to see what goes on within the Yotsuba group meetings. And the episode closes out on them being able to bring up the round table where all of these officials have been having their meetings to decide who Kira is going to kill for the betterment of their company. Now that we have been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank the episode. And as always, we'll rank on our two ranking lists, the mostly objective ranking list and the personal ranking list. All right, so for our mostly objective ranking, I have highlighted the rank values that I felt applied to this episode. And to start off with, we have a +2 for our single arc main character development, which of course has to do with L and learning that L is the top 3 detectives in the world, as well as the alias names of each of his aliases. The names, I didn't word that correctly. We're learning the names of his various aliases that he goes by as the top 3 detectives in the world. The first, of course, being L, the second best, Geraldo Coyle, and then the third best, a detective, Dineview. And that is, of course, as mentioned before, worth the 2 points, and then an additional 3 points positive, bringing us to 5 points total, is our multi-arc supporting character development, which is, of course, that Matsuda ends up having to fake his death by pretending to fall off of the apartment building. And then we have our negative points, which is a -2. And this I felt had some negative messaging and behavior in it. And this, of course, has to do with Matsuda. He is given a specific task, and he is supposed to be acting as Misa's manager. And while he is on his job doing his assigned task, he decides on his own, without letting anybody know, without having any backup, any cover, or anyone to replace him in watching Misa, that he is then going to go ahead and go and infiltrate the people that they are suspicious of, which, if he was caught and cut out as a detective, could ruin or set back their operation pretty far. Even as it is, they have to go out of their way to fake his death because he does end up getting caught. And the fact of the matter is, before he even goes into Yotsuba Group, L, like, it kind of cuts back and forth between him infiltrating and L talking to Weddy and Iber, who are the ones who are actually supposed to be doing that job and were chosen specifically because of their skill sets in being able to do that job. And then, of course, as soon as he basically finishes explaining the job to them, he's like, scratch that, we've got an emergency signal from Matsuda, who's already in Yotsuba Group. And it's a good thing that Matsuda didn't have anything incriminating on him, because in the end he was able to pull off his task as being Misa's manager, set up that they could potentially get in with Misa in the future, but ultimately, again, had to inconvenience everyone by having them stage this whole party, having to fake his death, and them having to prepare for that by having him fall onto a mattress, so catching him so he doesn't actually end up dying. And then, Iber on the ground in the wig to make it look like he landed. Then, even because there were so few of them, Elle and Light had to go and play the paramedics and take the body bag into the ambulance because they were short-staffed. And this is because he couldn't just do his job, because he was feeling insecure. And I feel like in reality, if a police officer, like someone who's an employee, was to go rogue like that and cause such an inconvenience and trouble, there probably would be some sort of consequence for that as far as their job is concerned. And it was just making Matsuda look pretty bad. And that is why I took the points, which leaves this episode with a mostly objective rank value score of 3 out of 10. And this now brings us to our part 1 ranking so far for our objective list. And in first we have Rebirth, Confrontation, Doubt, wager, decision, execution, ally, encounter, confessions, tactics, friend, pursuit, glare, unraveling, love, dealings, then assault. This episode, Matsuda comes in 18th, and then in last place is Overcast so far. Now with my personal rankings. So the reason I do my personal rankings last is because most of what I have to say actually gets covered in the summary and the mostly objective rankings. And that's also kind of true in the case of this episode. It was very Matsuda heavy, but it was Matsuda going rogue, and I don't know what the intention for the audience to feel like was by like the original writers or writer of like the original novas, mangas, etc. But I personally did not think that it made Matsuda look good. I feel like it reinforces the fact that everyone kind of thinks that he is less competent than the other members of the task force. Elle, several times in this episode, calls him dumb, basically that Matsuda is a baka, so stupid. And obviously, he has a job to do. And rather than being professional and doing the job that he was assigned, he went rogue, caused a bunch of trouble for everybody, almost died. They had to go out of their way and inconvenience themselves to save him. And if he had just done his job, that wouldn't be the case. Luckily, they were able to cover him so that Yotsuba didn't get super suspicious, because then a week later, when Wedi does, in fact, do her job, which she was assigned, and actually put up the security cameras, they actually end up having pretty poor security, and they didn't feel the need to increase it or anything. But had maybe had they not been able to come up with the plan quickly to, you know, fake his death, he A, could have died. B, he might have led them to become suspicious, increase their security, and have made Wedi's job even harder to infiltrate and get into their security system and get all the cameras up, etc. Third, now that he's had to fake his death as Misa's manager, that means somebody else is going to have to be given that job, and he then will have to take a different, more background job because they can't see him now that they think he's dead, which again is a convenience to the entire task, like an inconvenience to the entire task force. And I just feel like they really dedicated an episode to Matsuda. It's the name of the episode is Matsuda, and he did not do himself any favors in the episode. It was like an episode dedicated to making him look terrible and incompetent and dumb and like somebody who cannot do their job and somebody who causes trouble for others. And like, there's not really anything positive that Matsuda did in this episode. I cannot think of one thing that he did positively in this episode. And reaching for straws, grasping at straws, the only thing that could even be construed slightly as positive is that he may have given Misa an in, potentially, if they do decide to use her for commercials at some point in the future. But whether they will contact before the investigation's completed or whether it was completely useless, we don't know yet. And that's more of like an unintentional to save his butt because he got caught thing rather than something he intentionally did. So still, intentionally, there was nothing that he did in this episode that was smart. He also came off as very insecure because of the fact that the only reason he went into the Utsubo group is because he thought the task he was given was too small and he wanted to do something better, something more to prove himself, and so he took it upon himself to go rogue. I did not enjoy this episode, and for those reasons. I did find it kind of interesting with the information we found out about Elle being the top 3 detectives, learning their names, that he's being hired for himself, but like even that is very small, not really enough to like raise the episode up out of its low score. That is why the personal ranking for this episode is only a 1 out of 10. Which brings the personal ranking list so far to in first Rebirth, Encounter, Glare, Execution, Confessions, Doubt, Pursuit, Ally, Decision, Confrontation, Tactics, Dealings, Friend, Love, Overcast, Wager, Unraveling, Assault, and then in last place, so 19th place, is this episode, Matsuda. Bringing us to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far, where we'll be ranking each of the parts against each other. And so far for part one on our mostly objective ranking, we have a score of 143 out of a maximum possible 260. But on the personal side, there is only a score of 112 so far out of a maximum 260. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Death Note Part 1, Episode 19, Matsuda. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.